Welcome back to another segment here on Gems Podcast. I welcome in all the Gemsters to the community, and today I will be interviewing Andrew Matthews. He is in the hot seat, and we're going to be sharing and holding space with you. So be ready for an amazing conversation, and thank you so much for listening into another segment. Let me tell you a little bit more about who Andrew is. So, Andrew Matthews, all the way from Australia. He's an Australian speaker and author known for his numerous self-help books. Matthew was born in Victor Harbor, South Australia. He became a full-time writer in 1988, and since then he has written and illustrated 11 books. His book, Being Happy, was written and published in 1988. It has sold 7 million copies. Wow. And been published in 42 languages. A translation of Andrew Matthews' 1990 book, Making Friends by pro-democracy leader Kaiwa Minyam, also known as Ko Jimmy, became a hit in Myanmar. Do more to the subtext of individual freedoms than the actual advice of how to gather or garner new pals. So that's just a tip of the iceberg about who Andrew is, but there's definitely more that he's done. And he has his other book. He's done over 5,000 media interviews on 5 continents. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this. This man definitely gets around and is a force to be reckoned with. Because can you imagine 7 to 8 million copies of your book sold and translated in 48 languages? That's all about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging for everybody to come in and get the nuggets that he has to share. So without further ado, let's welcome the man behind it all, Andrew Matthews. Come on down.
Thank you. Thank you, Genesis. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for just sharing and holding space with me, Andrew, today, as well as the Gemsters. And I want to allow them to connect with you in a fun and personal manner before we get into the real part of the conversation. So we could do an icebreaker or a rapid fire 10-question game. What are you in the mood for?
Oh, let's do an icebreaker.
Okie dokie, y'all. We're breaking the ice with Andrew. So, Andrew, I want you to share something that you have done in your life that others from the outside looking in said, "Oh my gosh, Andrew, that is ludicrous and that's crazy." But it actually built your character and you learned more about yourself doing it.
I went and did a parachute jumping course when I was about 26, because I wanted to I wanted to learn about not just I didn't want to do the thing where you just attach yourself to someone else, but I wanted to develop the courage and the skill to actually leap out of a plane by myself and do what I needed to do to survive. And certainly, I remember my parents at the time were not happy, and I understand why. But it taught me a lot about focus, and it was a nice learning experience.
Wow. I was just over here saying, wow, y'all, and you just heard the silence. So we literally took an impromptu moment of silence because I was muted. Anywho, that is just incredible that you jumped out of a plane by yourself versus doing the tandem jump with an instructor or another person. But oh my gosh, I can only imagine like what was going through your parents' head at that time, or what may have been going through your head just jumping out of a plane, a perfectly good plane. But I think that's super cool though that you did that.
Yeah, so I guess I only did about 6 or 8 jumps, and then I thought, well, I've done that and I've survived, and then I moved on to safer things like playing tennis.
Nice. And thank you for sharing that, Andrew. And if any of you jumpsters are out there listening and you're thinking about skydiving, if Andrew can do it, you can do it too. You know, you just have to overcome fear and realize that on the other side of fear is your greatest potential and your greatest ability because you were brave enough to do something that may have terrified you and you're still living. And so now we're going to dive into the main part of the segment here is I want to talk about how happy people think as well as resilience because it definitely takes resilience in order to come into your happy place and realize that you control your own happiness and your own destiny in a sense because sometimes we are so conditioned to allow ourselves to say, okay, this makes me happy, or he makes me happy, or she makes me happy, or these things make me happy. When I personally believe happiness starts within ourselves and knowing who we are and knowing what that encompasses in a sense. But of course, you've wrote a book of being happy and it's sold so many copies. So I definitely want you to talk about that. So one of the things that that spoke up to me is like whenever I looked at the book cover, which is behind them for those of you watching the video, it said being happy, a handbook to greater confidence and security. So confidence jumped out because sometimes we aren't that confident in ourselves because of maybe our social norms, maybe how we were raised, maybe the climate we lived in, and security. So, Andrew, let's talk about being happy, especially in 1988. I'm sure a lot of things were going on there. What inspired you to write Being Happy?
I was not as happy as I could have been until I was about 25. And when I was 25, I made this shocking discovery. I discovered that the happiest people I knew had bigger problems than me. Now, that was a surprise. And suddenly I had no excuse. And I began to read a lot of books and study up on what it was that made happy people different. One of the things I noticed was that happy people focus on what they have, and
Mhm.
unhappy people focus on what's missing. And
Mhm.
so uh, that was a central premise to being happy. To answer your question about what was going on in 1988, there were not many books about happiness back in 1988, and certainly not self-help books with cartoons. So I thought if I can write a simple book that encapsulates what it is that happy people do and have lots of cartoons that make the book more entertaining and keep the message simple, then I can reach not only, I guess, insurance salesmen who seem to be the people that were reading self-help books back then, but I can reach a student or a mother or some guy that's working in a post office. And so that was the idea behind being happy. So uh, we look at, for example, happy people focus on what they have. Happy people decide not to complain.
Mhm.
It's a decision we make. We might say, okay, we know that whatever we think about, we talk about. If we think about food, we talk about food. But the reverse is also true. Whatever you talk about, you think about. So if you're complaining about your boyfriend, then that makes you unhappy because you can't stop thinking about what you've been complaining about. Things like that.
I love it. And I love the fact that you use cartoons because those little animated things definitely jump out and speak to people in various ways. And you brought up a good point. You said happy people don't complain. Unhappy people are the ones that complain or look at what they don't have. So it sounds like happy people are in a mindset of gratitude and gratefulness and appreciation, and those who are unhappy are maybe vying for things that they want to have, but they don't know how to acquire it or when it's going to come, and they're just dwelling on those things versus looking at what they already do have and being grateful and optimistic and just thankful for what is already going right. But do you think that some of that could be how they were raised, like the parents that raised them, or maybe their cultural background or the societal norms or whatnot that can contribute to the unhappiness versus the happiness?
I do, Genesis, and I understand that I was fortunate in that I had quite positive parents, And I had a father who was a joyful man and a joker, and he brought a lot of fun into our home. And I know that a lot of us haven't had that. So the people that inspire me are the people who have had a tougher upbringing to what I had, but still understand that whatever your past is, at some stage, when you're an adult, you say, well, my life hasn't been ideal, but I still understand that happiness is a choice that I make every day. And that even when things go wrong, I can do what happy people do. And that is say, well, what is one good thing about this situation that I didn't want? So if you've just had your flight cancelled and you're stuck at an airport for the next 3 hours, what's one good thing about being stuck at this airport? Or what's one good thing about being stuck in traffic? Even things that we say there can be nothing good about this, like I'm short of money, I'm broke. What's good about this? Well, we learn who our friends are, for example.
Yes.
We have a chance to learn to budget. We have a story to tell our grandchildren. This is where I was and this is what I did. And we have a chance to focus and make plans. So even those situations that we think nothing can be good about this, happy people ask themselves, what is one good thing about this? And that stops that. Well, what I say is that negative thoughts are like rats. You get one negative thought, and before you know it, you're surrounded by them. And so we stop the rat plague by saying to ourselves, when something goes wrong, what is one good thing about this?
Changing your mindset and your perspective. And one thing you said early on, Andrew, was that you weren't happy until age 25. So I kind of want to peel back that onion layer there. What was going on leading up to 25 that made you unhappy? And how did you personally shift your mindset and your perspective?
Yeah, good question, because I had no reason, and this is the point, I had no reason not to be happy because I was healthy. I had come from a loving family. I had possibilities in front of me. I had friends, but I just wasn't looking at all the good things that I had. I wasn't operating out of a sense of gratitude. And I can remember the day, it was the 19th of October, 1983. And I said to myself, you know, you're not really doing that well. And if you're ever to be happier, you may as well start today. And I made a decision that from now on, I'm going to see opportunities differently. I'm going to look at what I have instead of what I don't have. If I get invited somewhere, I'm going to go. If something comes up that might be fun, I'm going to do it. And I even developed a little motto, which was, if in doubt, do it, which was to to get me to jump in and enjoy life rather than sit back and hope that better things are going to happen. And I noticed that from that day, my life changed. It wasn't anywhere near perfect, but it was better. And it was better because I had made a decision that I'm going to focus on what I have instead of what I don't have. So in many ways, happiness is a decision that we make despite what's happening around us.
I like that. And in hearing you speak of that, I heard resiliency, I heard decision, choice, and you have to condition yourself to know that, okay, I'm going to take accountability and live in an attitude of gratitude, positivity, thankfulness. And then that contributes to bouncing back, because once you made that shift and you made that decision to look at what you do have versus what you don't have, it allowed you to bounce back. Hence your next book, Bouncing Back. So after you made that decision and that shift, is that when you started saying, okay, now I'm in the bounce back period. Now I'm going to write the next book? Or how did that book come about, Bouncing Back?
Okay, so Bouncing Back is my latest book. It was partly prompted by COVID, but very
Oh.
much by just realizing that everybody is bouncing back from something.
Mhm.
And I wanted to take a look at what it is that resilient people do. And I might just go through some of these things because I touch on these um, qualities of resilient people. And we all want to be resilient, like we all want to be happy. So, what do resilient people do? Number one is when things go wrong or things happen that they wouldn't have planned, they find purpose in it. They say, I
Mm.
wouldn't have chosen to be here, but what am I learning from this? I've got a cartoon in Bouncing Back where there's a guy climbing a mountain and he looks exhausted and he's sweating, and even his dog is sweating. And the caption is, what you thought was breaking you is probably making you.
Mm.
That is what resilient people understand. So people who bounce back, they're resilient. They accept what has happened that they can't change. There are some we can't change our parents, for example, or um, if we've got a health problem, then the first step is to accept it before we go about trying to fix it. So we accept what's going on. We look for good things every day. That's number three. Number four, resilient people live one day at a time.
Mm.
We can't carry around all the worries for the next 5 years, but what we can do is say, I will do my best until bedtime, and when tomorrow comes, I'll deal with it. So that's number four. Number five is when people get knocked down, resilient people, they get up, because what else are you going to do? Maybe you just lie there for a day or so, but eventually you have to say, I'm getting up. Number six is resilient people set goals, because goals give us a sense that we're taking control of our life. If you go and join a gym, you feel better. You haven't even been yet. But setting that goal of saying, this is my target, makes us feel better. So goals we set not for what we get, but for what we become and for how we feel. And then the big one is that resilient people imagine a better life. We don't
Mhm.
become better. We don't become great by looking at who we are. We become great by imagining who we want to be. So those are the 7 things that resilient people do. And that's really the backbone to my book, Bouncing Back.
Wow. And thank you for sharing that because I think we all have some form of bounce back in our life, whether it's personally or professionally. And I know that you have addressed over 1,000 corporations in 30 countries on attitude, enjoying work, and resilient. And for some of you Gemsters out there, his clients include Walmart, McDonald's, Lenovo, Honda, Dell, Intel, HSBC, and Citibank. And one of your talents is in making complex ideas simple. And just by you sharing those 7 things on what resilience is, it was so clear, it was concise, it was easy to understand, and it was easy to digest on what people who are resilient are doing and how people who aren't resilient can start doing those things in order to shift their attitude, shift their mindset, and get into a situation that they want to be in. So whenever you started embarking on, talking to these big corporations and clients, what are some of the underlying themes that you've heard that maybe their employees are facing it or having issues with?
One of the big things is relationships and relationships with colleagues. One of the things that I like to share, because we all have people in our lives who we find difficult or that we don't
Oh yeah.
understand. And so here's a simple idea that I've found helpful. And that is that when and you know this, Genesis, better than me, but when you know the story, the struggles and the heartbreak of almost any human being, it will break your heart. And those people that we have in our life that we find difficult, when we know a little bit of their story, uh, the people that we find difficult, some of those people grew up being told that they were stupid, or their father
Mm,
told them that they would never amount to anything. Some of them just believe that they're unlovable. And so they're out there trying to prove something every day of their life. So I may not be lovable, but let me show you how smart I am.
yeah.
Um, I play tennis with a guy called Ted. And Ted, he just seems like he's bulletproof. He's always making fun of people. People are making fun of him. And I thought nothing worries this guy. He's in real estate, he's resilient. And he shared with me in a quiet moment last year. He said, "My life is torture." He said, "There's not a day goes by that I don't worry about, have I said the wrong thing? Have I done the wrong thing?" He said, "My life is hell." And I mean, that stopped me in my tracks. And it was a reminder to me that those people that you think are confident, inexplicably difficult, we never know the pain and the trauma that other people are going through.
Mm,
And so the miracle, or the question is not, why are some people so difficult? The question is, how do they even survive with what they're dealing with? And
mm,
so one of the things I share when I speak in corporations is that if we can just be mindful that those difficult people in the office next to you are traumatized, suffering, worried that they don't measure up, try to prove that they're smart enough, then we're less judgmental and our relationships can be a whole lot better.
mm. I like that because then you're letting down your walls and your barriers because you never know what that person is dealing with. And I said this once or maybe a few times on my show is my smile, but do you know my history or my story? Or do you even know me behind my smile? Because sometimes people put on a smile on their face, or they put on, a safe space, because if they were truly vulnerable and transparent, would you even understand their history, their past, or some of the struggles if you've never even taken the time to walk in their shoes or understand where they came from? Because sometimes we may think we understand where someone is coming from, but in reality, unless we've personally experienced that journey or that situation, we may just stand there with them, but we can't truly connect the dots because we have not lived in that experience with them, or we have
Yeah,
not
well
lived in that
said.
experience for ourselves.
Yes, yes, beautifully said.
And another thing I want to bring up to the audience is some of your ideal avatars. And the avatars, for those of you listening, you may not relate to that, but it's the people that he speaks with, the people that see him, the people that gravitate. Some of those are CEOs, surgeons, teenagers, and even prisoners. And I want to highlight prisoners because sometimes people see prisoners as outcasts, and you may not even know what they did to go to prison. And it may be something small or it may be something grandiose, but they're still a human being, and we have to understand that people make mistakes. And sometimes they're doing things that they're trying to turn their lives around, but there may not be somebody to give them that saving grace. So can you talk about how those folks, the CEOs, the surgeons, the teenagers, and even prisoners, have gravitated to you?
One of the things I've learned, and that was, I suppose, by writing books that I set out to make very simple, is that even brain surgeons like simple messages and they like simple books. And so uh, there's not so much difference between what an audience wants to hear. They want to hear a sentence that they don't have to think about what does he really mean by that. They want to read a book whereby they can read a sentence once and say, I understand that and I get that. So in many
Yes.
ways, the specific challenges may be different, but the audiences, whether they're prisoners or whether they're brain surgeons or bankers, will be very, very similar in their worries and their concerns. I love to speak to prisoners because it reminds me of where I might have been if my life had been a little bit different. And the other thing is that when I speak in prisons, I'm speaking to a very grateful audience because they don't get a lot of opportunities to hear speakers. You know, when you're a prisoner, you don't go to seminars. So it's an opportunity to, when I present on stage, I draw cartoons as I speak. And so that is something also that it's like taking an animal on stage. Suddenly people just break into a big smile. There's a sense of relief and they think, well, I'm not going to have to concentrate that hard
Yeah.
here. I think I'm going to understand this. And the prisoners especially love it. And but when I speak with teenagers, I've spoken in over 300 high schools and universities just in Singapore and Malaysia, Philippines, China. Teenagers love it, that a guy comes on stage, the first thing he does is he draws a cartoon.
Wow, that is incredible. And it just, puts people at ease because sometimes I feel like coming from a corporate background where I was in oil and gas for 12 years and now I'm in healthcare, um, sometimes people come on stage looking all dressed up with their fancy suits or whatnot, and they're all put together and they're using these huge words or whatnot, not realizing that everyone in the audience may not understand what those words are, or there may be a disconnect where they check out mentally. But if you just come in there, maybe with your jeans, if you want to wear some distressed jeans and put on a blazer and kind of make it fun, don't be like, in these Armani suits or whatnot, but just kind of know who your audience is and kind of tailor yourself to them, then you kind of lessen it down in a sense, but to the point where the message is going to be conveyed, but they're not going to be checked out. Because there have been times where I've been in like big town hall meetings and these speakers have came and they're using these huge words or whatnot, and then you start to look down your row and you see people on their cell phone scrolling. But if somebody comes in there with props, or they come in there making it fun, or giveaways, or engaging with the audience by asking questions, you see how the room begins to shift. So I like the fact that you mentioned drawing cartoons, because no matter if you're drawing it for prisoners, teenagers, surgeons, or CEOs, that's something fun that everybody can relate to, because our inner child begins to come out of us. And I remember this, like, a cartoon or whatnot. And you kind of like jog your memory, even though your cartoons are not going to be the same cartoons that they had growing up. It's just a commonality and some interest that levels the playing field, if that makes sense. Did I say that right, Andrew?
Yeah, very much so. And I think the other thing is that our mind works on pictures. So if we can connect an idea to a picture, I will sometimes meet someone in the street and they will tell me, I saw you speak 25 years ago. I still remember the picture of the elephant that you drew on stage, or the picture of the iceberg, or the guy in a boat. So because that's how our mind works. And so not only is it more fun, but it's makes more sense to me.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing that. When you make it to Texas, let me know, because I'll definitely want to come out and check you out wherever you're speaking. But I know we're coming close to our time commitment, so I want to give you a chance to have an audible. Is there anything that I have not asked you yet in this conversation that you want to share with the Gemsters? And then we'll close out with your contact info.
I think this is worthwhile, that if we ask ourselves the question, why should we even bother to be happy? How do, because being happy is not necessarily always easy. We're talking about what is possible, not about what is easy. So why is it worth the effort? Now, the first thing is that we have more energy when we're happy, and we're healthier when we're happy. But there are other things. We solve problems. Genesis, when you are happy, you solve problems 20% faster. When you go and see a happy doctor, he diagnoses your illness 30% more accurately than an unhappy doctor. And in addition to that, when we're happy, we attract happy people. When we're happy, we notice opportunities. When we're happy, we take advantage of opportunities because we think maybe this will work, whereas when we're not happy, we think it'll never work. So we take risks. And when we're happy, we're also somehow a magnet for opportunities, which I don't even understand how all that works. But it is true that happy people just seem to succeed. The myth is that success makes you happy, but the fact is that happiness makes you successful. I've lost the sound.
Oh my gosh, technology. Technology has not been in my favor today, y'all. That was another pause break. But yeah, I was like, wow, because that was just a whole nugget of gems there. So y'all, I hope you were taking notes because happiness is going to drive your success. And successful people are happy because they're not worrying about what they don't have, they're worrying about what they do have. And they're, looking forward to the future. They're resilient, they're learning, they're growing, their circle of people that they're connecting with, they have positive people in their surroundings and etc. And one other thing I want to mention is, think about your mindset as this. So I have two egos. One I call negative Nancy. Whenever those negative thoughts pop in my head, I tell negative Nancy to sit down and shut up, because positive Patty is my positive ego. She's here to stay and she has something positive. So whether you need to name your egos or those thoughts in your head, so whenever you start to hear one creep in, you just tell that thought to sit down and shut up. And be in a space of positivity, energy, love, and all of that jazz, because it would definitely help prolong your life. Now I want to jump into your CTA, Andrew, which is your call to action. Once the Gemsters hear this segment, what is it that you want them to do? Because what good is listening to this content if we don't give them homework to apply what they learn?
Okay, so I do a newsletter every 2 weeks. And so if you go to my website, andrewmatthews.com, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can get that. If you like the ideas that I've shared with you, they're encapsulated in my books, which are on Amazon. So, for example, if you look up Being Happy or Bouncing Back, Andrew Matthews is my name. You'll find, for example, Bouncing Back is on Amazon in hard copy, ebook, and if you like to listen to books with an Australian accent, you can listen to the Audible version of Bouncing Back. Follow Your Heart is a book about career that's also got the Audible version. And of course, Being Happy is on Amazon in either hard copy or ebook.
Amazing. And Andrew, please share your website so they could connect with you and learn more about your community and just be connected in your pipeline, along with the newsletter, of course.
Yeah, so the website is andrewmatthews.com. So Andrew Matthews with 2 T's. Andrew Matthews is one word.com.
Perfect. And that's where you could connect with Andrew. You could subscribe to his newsletter and go grab a copy of the books. If you're working for an organization, encourage your ERGs, employee resource groups, to grab a copy for the books and, read these during the book club and have a dialogue conversation about it. And for those of you that are new to the GEMS community, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. It's available on 40+ audio platforms. Leave me a review on Apple. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, because that's how I'm going to grow. And until next time, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Have yourself an amazing day.